What's up guys, Sean here, Shock Surplus. Thanks for tuning in to the review. We get super excited about all things Tacoma, obviously. We got my 2006 Tacoma right here, and we got Jeff's 2015 Tacoma back at the shop. Actually, it's on a trailer, or maybe it's on some jack stands. It's getting 37s and a bunch of upgrades, so who knows what's happening with that thing. He said it should be on the trail next week. We'll see, Jeff. So anyways, we get excited about things, all things Tacoma here. And so when SDI pinged us to maybe help them out with the development on their new EClik system for the Tacoma, we were super stoked. We thought it was a dream come true because a full system developed from the ground up with electronic damping in mind for our own vehicles with, well, we have a ton of experience. Like, we were super stoked on that. So me and Jeff have played maybe a minor role in the R&D and the development of SDI's EClik system for the Tacoma over the past year, but I think they've really done their homework. They took a lot of our feedback and kind of put it into play. So we're going to dive into all the pros and the cons of the system, but before we do that, we kind of just wanted to really help you guys understand that when we talk about the Tacoma suspension, we talk about it from a frame of 9 or 10, 11 different suspension systems across both of the 2006 Tacoma we have and Jeff's 2015 Tacoma. So we've been on Bilstein 5100s, 4600s, Fox 2.0 coilovers, 2.0 snap rings, Fox 2.5, 2.5 DSCs, Icon 2.5s, Icon 2.5 CDCV, Stage 8, which this truck had before the current old Man Emu Bp51s. I've been in a King long travel Tacoma, Bilstein 8112 Tacoma, Bilstein 6112 Tacoma. We've put thousands and thousands of miles on and off road in the Tacoma on a bunch of different suspension systems. And so we kind of come from that frame of experience, and kind of all of that just shapes the recommendations that we give to you guys on what would be the perfect setup for your needs and your style. So with that said, let's dive into the SDI EClik setup for the Tacoma. Jeff's cousin lent the first Tacoma to SDI to really get the R&D going on that system. And the biggest thing that was always in our mind was the rear performance. It was always a little bit just too harsh in multiple scenarios, mostly on the trail and in the high-speed stuff. And that's really not the fault of SDI, actually, because the factory leaf springs on the Tacoma, if you guys go back there and look right now, you got 3 leaves that make up the leaf pack back there. And so that means you got about 9 inches of travel, which means 4 up, 4 down. And that truly means you got about 2 inches up and down before you're in the bump zones of that shock, before it starts limiting the travel just because of sheer physics. So that was the biggest thing. And also someone on this level of suspension, when you're talking high-end Fox, King, Icon, most people are going to be running an add-a-leaf, a progressive add-a-leaf, or a Deaver Expedition pack, or an Old Man Emu Dakar pack, or an Icon RXT pack. All of these aftermarket leaf packs are usually 7 or 8 or 9 leaf springs that are all progressive rate that give probably 20 to 30% more travel than factory. So that really just gives the shocks a lot more room to move. You don't have to dampen as firm in the beginning ranges, so you can let that suspension play a little bit before you really start to control the energy. And when you allow that suspension to play a little bit, whether it's in the front or in the rear, any suspension really, that's where the comfort comes, is being able to allow that suspension to play a little bit. In the rear of a factory leaf pack on the Tacoma, that's just really not possible, because you can't be loose, because then the other range has to be extremely firm. So that was a challenge that SDI was running into, and we suggested tune for a progressive leaf pack. And so I think they took that to heart, maybe through their own experimentation as well. But now the rear shocks are tuned for 1.5 inches to 2.5 inches over factory. So they're really taking into account an aftermarket leaf pack system in order to provide you the best performance possible out of their EClik system. We got basically 2 different versions of a Tacoma that we're going to go over. A completely stock level, unloaded kind of pre-runner setup, And then we've got a overlanding, kind of camping, long haul weekend kind of trail running setup with a lot of gear in the back. So we're that type. We're both types. Just running around on the weekends with nothing in the vehicle, super lightweight, super fast. And then we're also the other type where we've got family and 1,000 pounds of gear and we're on the road for a week and there's no high-speed dirt whatsoever. It's all mountain roads and slow trails and up and down driveways and maneuvering the daily driven life. Two very different types of drivers, and sometimes those drivers are the same person. This truck has seen it all, but it does it all as well. And so for you that do it all, you like to have fun by yourself, but you're also loading up with the family or a lot of gear for an easygoing weekend, the SDI system is definitely for you. So the first iteration that we got to really test was the barebones system on SDI's 2022 Tacoma. All it had was a progressive leaf pack in the back, new upper control arms in the front, no hydraulic bump stops, no limit straps, about 2 inches of lift, sitting level. We took that out for a spin in Lake Elsinore and the high speed stuff, really heavy rutted out washes, a lot of unpredictable terrain. You know, it's that kind of terrain that changes with the rain. And we were able to get the truck up to 40, 50, 60 miles an hour through these sections of very kind of aggressive terrain, where if you were slow going, your vehicle would definitely be at pretty steep angles. If you go extremely fast on a set of high performance shocks, your vehicle should be staying planted as it's just kind of skipping through that terrain and letting the suspension do its work under the vehicle. And so that's really where the EClik system kind of shined in my eyes. Of course, high-end suspensions are supposed to be able to do this. Fox, King, Icon can all do this. Radflow, ADS can all do this for sure. In relation to all the low-speed, daily driven benefits, tow and hauling benefits, keep all of that in mind as we go through this review and talk about the benefits that kind of we saw, because there are no cons to the SDI system that we could find, except maybe the price tag. It is a pretty hefty price tag, but like, you guys are spending this much on Fox, King, Icon, old Man Emu Bp51 stuff, Bilstein 8112, 8100 stuff anyways. It's a fully electronic suspension system, guys, that you can adjust all 4 corners at once on the fly. It's pretty incredible. So keep that in mind as we go through this review. No compromises I think that's one of their taglines, but I think it's just totally true. In the daily driven stuff, around on the pavement, highways, on the streets, driveways, super comfortable. It's not as firm as a digressive shock like Bilstein, but it still has the same tight handling characteristics that a Bilstein has. So that's always the pros cons of Bilstein in our minds. Bilstein's superb handling, but not as comfortable as something like a Fox 2.0. Whereas Fox 2.0 is very comfortable over the speed bumps and driveways and potholes and really easy fire roads and like rock chatter. Bilstein is harsh on that stuff. Fox is comfortable on that stuff. But where Fox lacks is controlling body roll and handling. So combine the best of both of those shocks, and that's the kind of feel and performance you get just on a daily driven experience. Fox comfort, Bilstein handling, and a 2.5-inch shock that you can go rip around on. That's what you've got. In order to feel the same kind of confidence in the Tacoma that I did with the EClik system, I had to, it took me until the Icon Stage 8 system in this thing to kind of feel that same confidence, to step on the pedal and watch the speedometer go 50, 60, 70, 80 miles an hour through pretty moderately difficult desert terrain. And that's no joke. If you've been that fast, that's like, you should probably be in a roll cage at that point, but that truck just felt so just even, no matter what we did. The next version of the truck, we got to take out to Johnson Valley and then up to Big Bear for a kind of a 2 or 3 day camping weekend. Lots more gear in the back. I'd probably say there's another 500 pounds of gear in the back. There was a bed cage, there was a rooftop tent that I think came in at about 150 pounds, an awning that came in at about 70 or 80 pounds, plus the gear we threw in the back. We're probably looking at 500, 600 extra pounds of gear. And then it was a lot of top heavy gear as well, which translates to a lot more body roll on the vehicle. especially on the streets during turns, driveways, all that stuff. That's kind of, it's a lot different vehicle behavior when you have that much weight spread out on the vehicle compared to a bare bones system. But the EClik system made it feel like it kind of wasn't there. My frame of reference is when I load up this thing, I have to adjust the BP51s in the back, mess with the rebound, mess with the compression to make sure that the rear end and the truck is not doing this as we're going down driveways or going over speed bumps. If it's too soft, which a lot of pre-runner builds and pre-runner shocks they're too soft at low speed stuff, so you get a lot of this jiggle. My Ram 3.0 Kings are like that, like super comfortable, but there's just way too much of this jiggle down off driveways, off speed bumps. Yes, it can do 70 miles an hour in the desert with no problem. We're only doing that 1% of the time. Do you want to see benefit to 95% of your driving, or do you want to see benefit to 5% of your driving? The EClik system internally in the cab, you can adjust for all of that on the fly. I like a completely as firm as possible setup. To me, comfort is confidence, and a tight handling vehicle is confidence. So that's not everybody. That's not a lot of you guys. Some of you guys just want super plush because you're on long straight roads or highways to and from work, and that's the most of your experience in your vehicle. For those that are on mountain roads, a lot of gear, overlanding, seeing a lot of different environments, this is where the SDI EClik system will really benefit you the most. Making those in-cab adjustments means that you can unload the entire vehicle, go inside, press one button, and now you're back to optimal settings. You can load up the whole rear end with 1,000 pounds and hit the road for the week. One button and you're at optimal settings. That's the beauty of electronic suspension. If you're a nitpicker, if you're nitpicky like me, like us, and you want your Tacoma always riding the best it can. When we got out into the dirt and we were going super fast again, Baja mode kept that vehicle super planted, even with 500 pounds, 600 pounds in the back, and very top heavy setup as well. We didn't experience any bottom out whatsoever. Once again, there was no external bump stops besides the factory bumps on the SDI Tacoma. And to not feel bottom out when you're doing 60 miles an hour through Johnson Valley, I thought that was pretty incredible. Other benefits of the EClik system is like when we were on the road to Big Bear out of Johnson Valley, but it's just super windy all the way up, and we knew that was gonna be a perfect test bed for reduction of body roll, I'll just say. Usually when you're super heavy, you're squishing into those corners and you're slowing down because your body is squishing, and then you're on, and then you're squishing. When you're squishing into it, you're always like, you're dialing back and you're kind of losing confidence until the next, you're like dialing back, losing confidence. When you're at full firm or you adjust your own settings inside through the module, it's just super flat. The whole body is just saying flat through those turns. It definitely feels more sports car-like, but also no compromise on the comfort. You can have a very comfortable set of Foxes or Kings, but the trade-off is handling, is on-street, daily driven handling. That's also why Fox has their DSC setup, so you can tune for that. If there's squishy in a good way, then that's what kind of the EClik system gives us. Squishy on all the hard off-road obstacles, it's like very bottomless suspension feel. If you've been in high performance and you're going fast and you've hit obstacles, you know when it's very harsh and jarring, you're like, oh, I don't want that again. But then you also know when it's like you go off an obstacle and it just feels like the whole vehicle is just like smooth sailing. That's the bottomless suspension. And on the EClik system, I feel like that's most of what we felt. It's hard to put into words how confidence inspiring that is, how much you want to just go faster. It's back to the Bilstein versus Fox metaphor. Comfortable, but no loss of handling. You're not going to get the same performance out of a Jeep on 40s with 14-inch King coilovers. It's not like that level of smooth plushness on all four corners, because that's not just what these suspensions are about. You got IFS in the front, you got maybe 10 inches of travel, you got solid axle in the back, maybe 11 or 12 inches of travel if you're lucky. It just doesn't compare to some of these other off-road beast. But back to the metaphor of no compromise, the SDI system does the best of all these worlds extremely well. What's going to affect most of you and most drivers of a Tacoma is mixing Fox and King comfort with Icon and Bilstein handling. That's just like the best way I can put it. After being on all these systems, on all these miles, it's like combining the best of both of those worlds on the daily drive. And then I think excelling at high speed in ways that the other guys cannot on a statically tuned shock. Dan Worley, the owner, will show you exactly how the module works and exactly how their shocks work with damping curves and all that technical stuff that frankly we don't have the expertise to talk with confidence. Dan definitely does. We'll link that video or their channel in the comments below. So the EClik system is coming in at about $5,000 retail. That seems like a massive price tag, but also like every single day we get customer orders in $3,000, $4,000 range anyways on these other systems. Icon Stage 8, Stage 9 systems run $6,000, $7,000, $8,000. And I think this SDI system matches up to a Camberg or a Total Chaos long travel King setup. That's gonna run you $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 as well. And it matches up to that because the active damping in the shocks doesn't have to compromise on low speed in order to dampen for high speed. It doesn't have to compromise low speed and high speed in order to dampen for medium speed. It does all of those exceptionally well through a computer and through the inputs of the vehicle. So $5,000 is a steal to have the best suspension on the market. We're super bullish on electronic suspension in general. The performance car world, Porsche and Audi and these guys and McLaren have had it for a very long time. Off-road is now catching up, and to see it at the consumer level for a Tacoma, stoked. Super stoked. So I actually can't wait to get this Tacoma running again and get the SDI system on here. If you've been watching this far and maybe you just purchased a set of $3,000, $4,000 2.5 shocks, SDI actually has a universal reservoir kit that you can take off your reservoirs, off your Fox or your King or your Bilstein or whatever, and put on electronically controlled SDI reservoirs that are controllable by the in-cab module as well. What that does is it doesn't touch the baseline valving of the main shock, but it adds their reservoir, which has a bridge that controls the inward and outward flow of the oil at 250 times a second. And that's all computer controlled and it uses their same algorithms. So if you want to make your shocks into cyborgs, SDI can make that happen. We've been making that happen and we'd love to make it happen. So hit us up. Thanks so much for watching up to this point. If you guys have any questions on Tacoma shocks in general, SDI shocks in general, we'd love to help out and get you ripping. Thanks again.